Hello, Cameron.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can I take a few minutes of your time? I want to
Of
ask you a
course.
couple of questions. So, question number one. Why we at Proper Turkey called Göktürk is Istanbul redefined? What the reason behind that?
Okay. Well, Göktürk has got quite a micro climate of its own. It's like a little city on its own. Think of Istanbul with its 20 million population, straddling over two continents, a massive and monstrous city that has a lot of diversity, a lot of color. In parts, it's, in my opinion, the most beautiful city on earth. Like Napoleon apparently once said, if the world was one big country, Istanbul would be its capital. I agree with that. Yet this beautiful monster capital offers so much diversity that one can easily get lost in it. It does have, let's face it, some shabby parts too. It's got everything for everyone. To drive from one end of it to another end will take you 2 hours on a good day. So to find the right landmarks, the right spots, you really got to travel. You got to get to places. So it's not an easy city to negotiate your way through. It's not an easy city to find what you're looking for. I guess one could argue that that is indeed what makes it an amazing and mystic city. And I agree with that. Now, back to your question, having given the background. Why do we call Göktürk Istanbul redefined? Because Göktürk is like this miniature Istanbul, but the very best of. Do you understand what I mean? Take all the distances, take all the chaos, take all the undesirable parts of Istanbul, like every city has done, take them all out, take all the very best of Istanbul, from arts to culture, to social life, to cafes, to street culture, to restaurants, to sporting activities, you name it, golfing, horse riding, you name it. Take all of that and put them in this beautiful spot called Göktürk, which is under 20 minutes from the very heart of the monster city of Istanbul. Last week, when we had this team dinner in Göktürk, if you remember, we set off from our Şişli office. Şişli is the heart of Istanbul. And under 20 minutes, I clocked it, we had entered Göktürk. So it's almost like a stone's throw from the very heart of the city, yet it's so elite, it's so neat, so clean, wider roads, plenty of green all around, because it is wrapped in the Belgrade forest, the biggest forest of Istanbul. So it's like a mini Istanbul that kind of carries the very best of Istanbul within its essence. But it's not a village. It's got the hustle and bustle of Istanbul in a sort of smaller scale. So this is why I kind of call it Istanbul redefined. If you want the best of Istanbul in one almost pocket-sized mini Istanbul, Göktürk, 15-20 minutes from Istanbul's airport, 15-20 minutes into the heart of Istanbul. In fact, it's the halfway house between the airport and the heart of Istanbul. It's the halfway house. There lies Göktürk in the middle of the Belgrade forest, a lovely town with beautiful architecture, with all the cultural activities one could expect, best of fine dining, best of cafes, street culture. Istanbul redefined for those who are looking for that. That's why I called it Istanbul redefined.
What does Göktürk means to me as an investor?
For you, if you're looking at it from an investment viewpoint, Göktürk is literally where you've got a very high level of desirability, so very high and persistent demand, where supply is only limited. So very limited supply, very high persistent demand. Göktürk is premium. Göktürk is certainly premium. If you compare prices in Göktürk to most other parts of Istanbul, you'll find that Göktürk is pretty comparable to places like Nişantaşı, Bebek, the best parts of Kadıköy. So Göktürk is premium. But as an investor, it's a premium spot which is on a like-for-like basis. If you look at some other world capitals, the equivalents of Göktürk, like, as I always say, Hampstead to London, Hamptons to New York, if you look at that, Göktürk is still highly affordable as a very special enclave within the heart of Istanbul almost. It's highly affordable, and because the demand is so high, supply is so low, prices will continue increasing. In fact, if you look at Istanbul averages and compare Göktürk, the price increases, the value increases Göktürk has seen in the last 5 years as opposed to Istanbul averages, you'll find that Göktürk appreciated in value significantly higher than Istanbul average appreciation in value. So Göktürk is gaining, is appreciating more so now than pre-COVID, in fact. Because with COVID, people's attentions turned more and more toward special places like Göktürk, where they have a bit of nature almost at their fingertips, but they're still only a very, very short distance from the very heart of Istanbul. So Göktürk fits right in there.
Okay, I'm a home buyer. What is it that available in Göktürk property-wise?
Okay, I mean, Göktürk has a range of homes, majority of which are very well done. Unlike some other parts of Istanbul, you will not see shabby buildings in Göktürk. Almost all of Göktürk's stock is kind of modern, contemporary, and pleasing to the eye because it's a special place with special homes. What's available? There are some new projects that are coming onto the market. In fact, what we noticed is Göktürk prior to COVID coming in and Göktürk post-COVID. Post-COVID, what we noticed is some larger developers have moved into Göktürk. They were not playing in Göktürk before. They weren't there before. After COVID, with the surging demand for places like Göktürk, larger developers have moved in trying to take advantage. What I'm noticing with quite a few of these developers, like with many others, in fact, is that they tend to rely on sales and the financing of their project via sales. In other words, they would like to do what we call OPM, other people's money. So they like to sell and finance their products and projects with that. Fair and good, all developers do that. However, given the fact that 2024 and 2025 too, in my opinion, are going to be for the domestic market, which accounts for over 95% of all real estate transactions in Turkey. And in a place like Göktürk, this figure is closer to 100%. Göktürk is very affluent, well-to-do Turkish, to be honest with you. So these developers who moved in, and he closed land plots with a view to developing them, and they started their projects. So if you go to Göktürk today, you'll see that there are quite a few ongoing new developments. Well, all of a sudden, from having quite high demand 2 years ago, 3 years ago, demand has gone down, with interest rates being hiked up last year, around the middle of last year. Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I'm repeating it for the benefit of our audience, that the Turkish domestic market is very slow, meaning that what they planned they would do, in other words, finance their production via sales, isn't happening now. Or it isn't happening as fast and as solidly as they planned it. Which means some of these developers may delay their completion dates by quite a noticeable length of time, 6 months to 18 months to 2 years, because sales are slower, cash is coming in much slower. So what I would do, and at this stage I do not wish to name any developers, but I would go for developers that have top league ranking in terms of financial viability. I would go for developers that have other business interests, not just construction. In other words, I would go for the strongest financial viability at this point in time, certainly in 2024 and probably halfway through 2025. Because as you know, I foresee that over the next 12 to 18 months, the domestic market will be very slow in Turkey. This is something that the developers would not have planned for, because the change in monetary policy happened all unexpectedly after last general elections. So it caught them by surprise for sure, because if I look at their moves over the last 2 years, the way they bought and closed land plots, the way they geared themselves up for their next on constructions, it's quite obvious to me that they relied heavily on demand being very high, because it was. Well, when the demand is no longer as high, nowhere as high as what they had planned, as an individual coming in to buy, you really and truly want to keep yourself on the safest possible side. So go for developers, and there are one or two in Göktürk right now operating. Go for out of all of those, go for developers that have very, very strong financial viability. In other words, those developers who, come what may, even if they sell not one single unit, they will complete because they have the money. Go for those. This is a very, very important tip, by the way. It's the kind of tip that you want here in the market, because everybody is trying to sell what they have. So it's the very last thing that they would say. But this is the reality of 2024 and 2025.
So, Göktürk is Istanbul redefined.
It is indeed.
Many thanks, Cameron. I'll see you next in a new subject and few other questions.
Many thanks.